All right, so today let's dive into something kind of fun. Ever thought about like what it would be like if animals had jobs? Like, can you imagine like a dog,
Yeah.
like with a tiny police uniform chasing squirrels, or like an elephant, like carefully like swinging a wrecking ball?
I mean,
It's pretty funny, right? Well, it turns out that this whole like silly idea, it's actually the whole basis of an English language learning video.
yeah, and what's really interesting is this video, What If Animals Had Jobs?
Yeah.
It uses this really fun scenario to not just entertain, but to teach vocabulary and grammar.
Yeah, it's definitely not your typical English lesson.
Right.
But the video, it connects these like animal job combinations
Yeah.
to this concept of the second conditional in English grammar.
Right, and even if you're not learning English, this grammatical structure, it's relevant to everyone.
Yeah.
Because it's all about hypothetical situations, thinking in if-then terms. That's a fundamental part of how we learn, how we solve problems, even just daydreaming about possibilities.
So like instead of saying a cat makes delicious food, the video uses the second conditional to see something like if a cat were a chef, their food would be amazing.
Ooh.
It's subtle, but it totally changes the meaning, right?
Exactly, and it really highlights how this kind of thinking encourages us to consider all these possibilities and consequences. It's like this core part of critical thinking, and it's something that we're constantly using in our lives, even if we don't really realize it.
So the video presents these like hypothetical situations, like you said, a dog police officer
Yeah.
or an elephant construction worker. And then it uses those examples to teach the grammar, to express those what if situations. I mean, it's a pretty clever way to make learning engaging, right?
Oh, absolutely. Our brains are wired to remember information better when it's presented in a way that's unexpected and emotional and, fun. Like, think about it. You're way more likely to remember a joke than a boring lecture.
Oh, for sure. I can still remember some of the crazy mnemonics I used back in school, even all these years later. So how do you think this approach, like using humor and these animal job scenarios, how does that tap into those same learning mechanisms?
Well, for one thing, it creates a really strong visual. Can you just picture this dog in a uniform struggling to write a speeding ticket with his paws? Add that image. It's going to stick with you, along with the grammar lesson that's attached to it.
Right. It's like this mental cartoon just playing in your head.
Yeah.
And the video. It's not just throwing out random animal job combinations. There's some real thought behind each pairing. Like using stereotypes we already have about certain animals.
And that's what makes it really interesting. It makes us confront those stereotypes and consider if they'd even make sense in a different context. For example, we often think of cats as independent and even aloof. Would that really translate well to a demanding job, like a chef who needs to manage a team and cater to all these customers' needs?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's funny to imagine a cat chef meticulously plating a gourmet dish.
Yeah.
But would they really have the patience for a busy kitchen? Or would they just be hiding in the pantry, judging everyone's taste?
Right, that's the humor of it. And it opens up this space for discussion and critical thinking. We're not just passively absorbing information. We're actively engaging with it, questioning these assumptions, and even laughing along the way.
So this approach, it's not just about teaching English. It's about encouraging a more playful and inquisitive mindset. And honestly, that's something we could all benefit from, no matter what we're learning.
Exactly. It reminds us that learning doesn't have to be a chore. It can be an adventure full of surprises, humor, and even a few aha moments.
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about the video's overall approach, but let's dive into some specific examples of these animal job combinations and see what insights we can uncover. Are you ready to play detective and analyze these pairings?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, great.
What's first on the list? Well, the video starts with a classic. The dog police officer. It's almost impossible not to picture a German Shepherd in this tiny uniform, right?
Oh yeah, totally. It's such a common trope.
Yeah.
But why do you think that pairing feels so natural to us?
Well, I think it's because it plays on these really deep stereotypes we have about dogs, like loyalty, obedience, that strong sense of smell, all qualities that we associate with good police work.
Right.
But it also raises this question, are we maybe limiting our understanding of both dogs' A&D police work by just relying on these simple notions?
Yeah, it's true. Not all dogs are cut out to be police officers, just like not all police work requires those specific traits. And the video, it's not afraid to poke fun at those stereotypes either. Can you imagine that same German Shepherd trying to write a parking ticket with those huge paws?
Exactly. It's that mix of the familiar and the absurd that makes it so memorable. And by exaggerating those stereotypes, it actually makes us question if they're even true.
Okay, so let's move on to another example. The elephant construction worker. Now, that one seems pretty straightforward. I mean, strength and size are key in construction, right?
Yeah, on the surface, for sure. Elephants are known for their power
Right.
and their ability to move like really heavy objects. But the video, it highlights another part of their skill set, dexterity. Like we've all seen those videos of elephants picking up tiny objects with their trunks.
Right. It's amazing how such powerful creatures can also be so precise. So you could have an elephant operating a crane 1 minute and then carefully placing a delicate mosaic tile the next.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, do we underestimate the potential of elephants and maybe even other animals because we only focus on those more obvious traits?
That's a great point. It's like we're putting them in boxes based on our limited understanding of their capabilities. And, come to think of it, don't we do that with people too?
Oh, absolutely. We make assumptions based on appearances, job titles, or even just a person's species. I mean, this video, it's lighthearted, but it kind of makes us consider those assumptions and how they might limit our perception of the world around us.
So it's not just about learning English. It's about expanding our thinking and challenging our own biases. Okay, so let's try a different approach. Instead of analyzing the examples from the video, what if we came up with our own animal job combinations?
Ooh, I love that idea. It's like a chance to put those creative thinking skills to the test.
What do you have in mind? Well, thinking back to the cat chef, what if we took another animal that's known for being meticulous and maybe a little particular? How about a raccoon accountant? I can just picture them meticulously organizing receipts and balancing those books.
And raccoons have those little nimble fingers, perfect for handling money and using a calculator. Plus, they're known for being resourceful and clever, which are valuable traits in the world of finance.
Exactly. Okay, your turn. Think of an animal that's known for its patience and calm demeanor. What kind of job do you think they would excel at?
How about a sloth therapist? They're known for being slow and deliberate, which could actually be very calming for patients. They'd be excellent listeners, never rushing anyone. And their slow, steady voice would be super soothing.
That's brilliant. Imagine a sloth leading a meditation session or offering words of encouragement. With that like Zen-like tranquility, they'd be the ultimate stress busters. Okay, this is fun. I've got another one. A chameleon spy. They could blend into any environment, gather intel, and disappear without a trace.
Oh, wow. Now that's thinking outside the box. Blending into their surroundings, gathering intel. It's perfect. This is exactly what this kind of creative exercise encourages. Looking beyond the obvious and considering the hidden potential in unexpected places.
Man, it's not just about animals. This playful approach to learning, it can be applied to any subject. Like imagine trying to learn history by creating a board game about famous battles or understanding physics by building a miniature roller coaster.
Exactly. By tapping into our sense of play and imagination, we can make learning more engaging and memorable. And who knows, maybe we'll even discover hidden talents and passions along the way.
So, we've analyzed the pairings from the video and even brainstormed our own. But let's take this thought experiment one step further. What would a world where animals actually DID have jobs look like?
Ooh, now we're getting into some speculative fiction territory, but I think it's a fascinating thought experiment.
Right, like would animals have unions? Would they demand fair wages? Would a dog police officer get a bone instead of a paycheck? Would there be an office pet peeve about a coworker always burying their snacks in the potted plant?
These are all great questions. And it's funny to think about those practical implications of a multi-species workforce. But it also makes us consider some deeper ethical questions, like how would we ensure fair treatment and prevent exploitation? What rights would animals have in the workplace?
Yeah, it raises a lot of intriguing possibilities, but also potential challenges. And maybe it even makes us question the very nature of work itself. Like, is it something inherently human? Or is it something we could share and potentially even learn from in collaboration with other species?
That's a thought-provoking question. We often just assume this human-centric view of the world. But this exercise challenges that perspective. Maybe there are valuable insights and even solutions to problems that we could gain by working alongside animals.
It's definitely a concept worth pondering. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. From dog police officers to sloth therapists to imagining a future where animals are our colleagues. But there's one final layer to this deep dive that I think is really important.
And what's that?
I think we've been focusing a lot on the content of the video, like all these funny animal job pairings and all the questions they bring up. But what I find most interesting is the bigger picture, the principle that makes this approach so effective.
You mean like using humor and imagination as tools for learning?
Exactly. Like the video, it could have just presented the second conditional.
Yeah.
in this really dried textbook way. But by using these unexpected scenarios and some humor, it becomes something you remember, something that sticks with you.
Yeah, it's like, oh, it's the difference between reading facts and like experiencing a story. Our brains, they connect with narratives and characters and emotions. And when those are present, learning just becomes so much easier.
Yeah. It's like hiding vegetables in a delicious sauce. You still get all the nutrients, but it's way more enjoyable.
I like that. That's a great analogy. It shows how this approach can make learning less intimidating, especially for those subjects that seem really hard or complex when we're laughing and using our imaginations. It just breaks down those mental barriers.
Right. It's like we're letting our brains play and explore and make mistakes without being afraid to be judged. And in that space, we're just so much more open to new information.
For sure. Think about when you were really into a game or a creative project, you probably lost track of time. You were so engaged.
Right.
And you were learning without even knowing it. That's the power of play.
Yeah, that feeling of flow.
Yeah.
Where you're just so focused that everything else disappears. And I think that's what this video does so well. It reminds us that learning, it doesn't have to be boring. It can be joyful and surprising and even hilarious.
Right. And when we start learning with that playfulness and curiosity, it opens up all these new possibilities and connections and new ways of seeing the world.
As we finish up this deep dive into animals with jobs, we want to leave you with this. Don't underestimate the power of play if you're trying to learn something new or master a skill or just understand this crazy world we live in. Don't be afraid to embrace those moments of laughter and imagination and just silliness.
Yeah, because in those moments, you might discover a totally new way of seeing things and maybe even learn a little bit more about yourself too.